I want to open today's session with a quote from the movie Her with Joaquin Phoenix and Scarlett Johansson, directed by Spike Jonze. And I'll give you this quote, and if you haven't seen it yet, you can rest assured there will be no spoilers here. But if you have not seen the movie, may I recommend it? It is perhaps my favorite movie of all time. It's probably the number one. And if it's not number one, it's definitely in the top 3. And this quote that I'm about to read is going to kick us off into a new way that I want to express to you a deeper level of presence that I've discovered in my practice over the last few days. It's resulted in not just this deeper level of presence where I feel more peaceful and centered. It's been able to provide deeper levels, more profound levels of healing internally for myself, and also more profound levels of self-empowerment. It's shown me where I've been messing up in my journey of creating my life, being in charge of my life, and how I can go about it going forward. So, as always, this is a big bite. This is a lot to promise in a single video. But it's not like these 3 things when I talk about presence and I talk about healing and when I talk about empowerment, as if we need to have a separate talk for each of these 3 things. Really, they're all linked. They're all elements of the same thing, which is this homecoming sense. So I want to share that with you here. And I'm hoping that as I talk about it, you can get a sense of it. You can feel it. You can kind of bask in it. So here comes the quote. It's like I'm reading a book, and it's a book I deeply love. But I'm reading it slowly now. So the words are really far apart, and the spaces between the words are almost infinite. I can still feel you in the words of our story, but it's in this endless space between words that I'm finding myself now. And a silence descends upon the room. So what is meant by this quote? Well, it points to 2 different modes of existence, 2 different modes of conceptualizing our lives. One, which is the typical way that we consider our lives, where we're going from the past into the future. We are accomplishing the story arc of our lives. Getting things done, resolving the story. And then there's this other mode where the entire story happens within a space that is completely virgin, quiet, still, completely indestructible, timeless, locationless. And it's this space in between the words, behind the words, that I would like for us to orient our attention now. Immediately notice the sense of refusal that comes from the ego, where we are approaching a threshold where the ego says, I don't like this, right? It's boring, waste of time, unproductive, it's not going to go anywhere, better things to do. It may also say, maybe I can kind of listen to this, but also listen to something else. Maybe I can listen to this, but not pay very close attention. Not, of course, like you should pay attention, but the ego's looking for ways to avoid what we're doing here because we're bringing our attention off of time. And when our attention comes off of time, it's also coming off of our problems. And we're teaching ourselves experientially that our problems are not the most important thing. They're not the most important element of our existence. And our problems aren't essential. We may solve them, we may not solve them. We may solve some and not others. We may solve some now and we may solve some later. But as we discussed in an earlier video entitled the territory of unmet desire. This territory is our home. It's where we live. In a place of having some desires met, but it doesn't feel like anything. Like you had a desire last year, I'm sure, and you had that desire met, but it doesn't have any bearing on you now. But any unmet desires, unmet needs that we have presently, they impress on us, they impose on us, and our mind will tell them that it's important. Like it's essential to get them done, and to be in this territory of unmet desire is unacceptable. And so what we're learning here is that the desires aren't so important. They're not so relevant. What we also learn is that through bringing our attention to the space in between the words, it's not just that there's nothing there, it's not just an emptiness, but it's more of a fertile ground that we can call the unmanifested realm. We can also call it the ground of being. This ground, this foundation of our experience, the basic substance of our experience, that remains ineffably silent as it watches the clouds pass, as it watches the things move by, as the events come and go, as the objects come and go. So I refer to three aspects of our conversation: the part where we attain peace, the part where we attain healing, and the part where we attain empowerment. And so perhaps I can share with you how this ground is relevant to all three. Starting with the low-hanging fruit, the part where we attain peace is pretty evident. If you can feel it already, perhaps you can. When we tune into the ground, there's an immediate sense of peace that falls upon us. The only challenge about it is that the more we tune our attention toward it, the more the mind will throw more enticing things at us to distract us and put us off. But you can make a simple choice right now that it would be worth your while to bring your attention to the space in between the words, to the ground of being, and just be with it. Be near it. Orient your attention to it. Allow it to be worthy of your attention. Allow it to be worthy of your time. The ego mind will threaten us and say, we're wasting time. Time is running out. But this is just something that it says. It's a way of spiking fear. If it can make us afraid that it can get back in control. Because the other element of the ground is that it's infinitely creative. And the more we bring our attention to it, the more we can draw upon its creative power. This is very easy to demonstrate because what you may find is that as you continue to orient yourself to the ground of being, and just giving permission to the mind stream to relent, you may notice a feeling of inspiration coming up in you. Maybe now or maybe later. What I find anyway, I can speak firsthand for sure, but I've heard, we've all heard countless stories, is that inspiration strikes. New ideas come when we allow there to be gaps in the mind stream. The mind wants to see itself as the source of creativity, as the source of solutions to its problems. But it's not that. It's not because the mind isn't creative. It's not generative. It's just a storehouse of information, of thoughts already thought, of solutions already come to. It's good at solving problems. It's good at looking out for threats. It's good at mitigating loss. But it's not good at bringing something new, birthing something new into the world. The very best thing a mind can do to that regard is to get out of the way, to stop clouding over the entire sky, to let the sun through. I was speaking with a group that I lead, and it occurred to me while we were speaking, it was really profound, that when we offer questions to ourselves that have a stopping effect on the mind, it can open up a gap in the mind stream and create space to summon an answer or an inspiration or an image or a miracle. So one of these questions would be, what opportunities are present right now for more wisdom? Say, what opportunities are available to become wealthier, to receive more money? What wisdom is available right now? And so you can see, as you ask these questions, you just receive them, you just offer them to yourself, immediately the mind says, I don't know. What other answer could there be? I don't know. And then the mind doesn't like saying, I don't know. It's really the last thing it would ever want to say, because when the mind says, I don't know, it feels powerless. It feels like it's lost control. It kind of goes into a tantrum or a tizzy. So you offer to yourself this gift of, what opportunities are available now. You give permission to the mind to stop. And then you just stay at center and wait. Wait for something to arrive. And maybe it'll come right away. Maybe it won't. Maybe it'll come later in the day, but something will come. And it'll come in such a way that there's no mistake about it. You could talk yourself out of it. So when you receive, say, like a bolt of insight of like, oh, here's what I could do to make a bunch of money right now. And you might say, is that connected to when I said the thing earlier? Nah, I was going to think this anyway. Like, you can always do that. But if you're honest and moderately trusting at minimum, then you'll see the connection. You'll see that what you received in terms of an insight or a coincidence, it's just an echo. It's just a clapback from your request. So this is the productive, creative power of the ground of being. In order to access this empowerment that's available, what first becomes necessary is addressing where we have limitations, where we have found limitations. So in what way do you feel limited? And in what way do you seem limited in your life? What limitations are you running into? Is it financial limitations, time constraints, health constraints? When we have these, typically, we're in reaction against them. And we say things like, I would be able to do so much if it were not for blank, blank, blank. Here's where I'm limited. If only I had this, this, and that, then I'd be able to do X, Y, and Z. And so the invitation for you now is to consider that when we blame limitations for our inability to create, that what we're actually doing is funneling our creativity through the limitations in order to more fully solidify them. In other words, we believe in them so much that we actually make them more real in our lives. We fix them in place. Whatever we struggle against, for example, we fix in place. Whatever we blame, we fix in place. Whatever we try to run away from or withdraw from or be in denial of, we fix into place. So therefore, the process of becoming empowered is in dropping our reactivity against our situation and stop solidifying it by believing it so much. One way of accomplishing this is through acceptance. That's why acceptance is so powerful. The biggest argument against the practice of acceptance and surrender is, one would say, well, that sounds nice, but then I want to do something. I still want to change it. And that's why people would often turn away from concepts like those. And they say, no, I still want to have initiative. I want to be empowered. I want to change things. I don't want to just wallow in the negativity. I don't want to just give up control over my life. But the irony is that when we're in reactivity against some sort of element of our lives, then we are disempowered by it because we have disempowered ourselves, because we've made this thing into the reason why we're not free, why we don't have our creative power. So the other part of the teaching on acceptance and surrender is we move into deep acceptance and surrender, and thus into peace, thus eliminating any internal conflict we have against this element of our lives, so that we can be empowered to influence it, to change it, to work with it. But prior to acceptance and surrender, we just want to get right to the part where we change it. But that's not possible, because if we don't first do the first step of this two-punch method, if we don't do the acceptance and surrender part, then we're just in reactivity. And then anything we do from a place of reactivity, we're doing from a place of disallowance, of negativity. It's disempowered, it's uncreative, it's action that's born of the mind. We're not centered. We're creating a mess as we clean up the mess. We're creating suffering as we attempt to bring suffering to a close. Because the action is born from a place of suffering. So first, we bring the suffering to a close. We eliminate the conflict. We arrive on friendly terms with the thing that we wish to change, until we can congruently, authentically say, even if this thing doesn't change ever, I will still be well. I'll still be okay. All will be well. All will be okay. Even if this thing never changes, all is still well. When we arrive there, that's neutrality. That's indifference. That's you fully discerning between relative and absolute wellness. You've discovered experientially that you always have access to absolute wellness, that absolute wellness is your natural state, even if things are not well relatively. And then once that's discovered, then you can connect to your creativity, and then you can do what we're talking about just a minute ago, where you float questions. And you're in such a light and creative place. You just say, I wonder what it would take to change this. I wonder if changing this is possible. I wonder what can be done about this. I wonder if this situation can be improved, and what would it take to improve this situation? What is possible now? This healing modality, Access Consciousness, that I sometimes reference, they have many different courses that they return to. One of them is just the simple question, what else is possible? It's, in my view, one of their most wonderful offerings. What else is possible? What else is possible? The question is so light. And it gives your unconscious mind something to work with. Because again, whatever we give to our unconscious mind will solidify it or create more of it. If we offer to our unconscious mind, for example, the question, what's wrong with me? Then we'll get an answer. If we offer to our unconscious mind the question, where did I go wrong? Then the unconscious mind, in its infinite creativity, as it draws from the ground of being, as it draws with infinite productivity, infinite creative power, it'll draw answers to your questions. There's no question that it can't answer. It doesn't matter if the question is nonsense. That's why the quality of the question that we ask ourselves is so important. Instead of asking what went wrong, we ask what's possible now. What opportunities are present? What miracles are possible? What would it take to improve this situation? How deeply peaceful can I be? Being careful with that one, you wouldn't want to ask questions that have limitations associated. For example, you wouldn't want to ask, what's the maximum amount of peace I can achieve? Because if we ask about the maximum, then we might get there and it might be amazing, but then we've created some sort of a ceiling. So there's an art to this, as you can see, crafting good questions. And again, all of this can only be done from a place of indifference. If we haven't achieved that indifference, let's say we're in a place where we're really hard up for money, and maybe you're listening to me talk right now, and you're like, okay, I need money. How do I do it? Okay. And then we you take everything. You take this golden goose that's laying golden eggs, and we just crush it because we're gripping it too hard. So what that will signify to us is that we haven't done the first step. We haven't achieved acceptance. We haven't arrived fully in the presence. We're still on the level of the story, on the level of the drama, and we haven't attained deep grounding into the space in between the words. When we ground ourselves in the space between the words, we die to the story. When we abandon the story, even if it's just for a minute, with every intention of picking it back up, and we can always pick it back up whenever we want. But when we die to it, when we withdraw from it, when we turn off that software momentarily, then there's a certain death that takes place on the level of story, on the level of a mentalized sense of self. And then through this creative capacity, like some people just stay in that state. Some people just turn it off and live there in a state of total presence. That might be Eckhart Tolle on the park bench for 2 years, or any one of these Zen monks, or monks that live in a cave, or Maharshi, how he attained such a deep, unspeakably, ineffably profound awakening that people just kept him alive, I think, for several years. His limbs were starting to rot because he was just so profoundly blissed and so deeply in touch with that ground of unconditional love. That can happen. But in my view, it's much better to return to the story. But in this case, you can choose a different one and create through that. So how do we do this? There's a technique that I've been working on that I can call seeding. Perhaps you've heard of it. So think about what you want to change, right? Say it's money. Say you want to find more money, and say you've been struggling against money. You're worried about money. Money's running out, and you've been deep in this headspace for a long time. So you offer yourself a question, a light question. Say, is money available right now? Just as a starter. You may get a no, you may get a yes. And so then we would improve the question by saying, what money is available right now? And you see how that is a better question, because it takes more leadership over the unconscious mind, where it's like we're no longer asking, is there any money available? We ask, where is the money that's available right now? What would it be like to find more money, to access more money, earn more money? What does it feel like to be wealthy? What does it feel like to not have to worry about money? And so we offer these questions. You can keep coming up with them, right? And don't do nothing special, no effort, nothing weird, right? Just offer it to your mind. Give it up. Get back to your life. And then what you'll notice is that that these seeds have been planted in your unconscious mind. And you'll get a sense of it. And you may get an idea of something you can do. Maybe somebody will come through with some money for you. Who knows? Again, we don't want to grip this too hard, because this is play. The essence of our creative power comes from play. And then finally, just a word on healing. You can ask what healing is possible. Here's my personal practice. I have deep respect for science and medicine and authority. But my personal practice is that I never allow anybody to tell me that something can't be healed. This isn't a message that I internalize. Does this mean that I make unwise decisions? No. But I'm so careful about what I take on authority that if I'm offered a piece of information that strikes me as heavy, sad, unwieldy, limiting, causes me to contract, then at minimum, I don't accept it right away. At minimum. And then I continue to play with questions of, what might it be like to heal this? How can I heal this? How can I heal this? How can this be healed? And then I might find myself in the presence of another authority who says, yes, this can be healed. And then through that optimism, through that creative optimism, perhaps we can find a way. So, that's what I came here to say. The space between the words. You can access the ground by slowing down and slowing down and slowing down. Slowing down to a stop. Stop. And when we stop, we find ourselves in this liminal space. And time is still, like clocks are still moving, the sun's still moving, Earth is still moving. But there's a sense of remembrance and infinite creativity that comes with it. So have fun. Please enjoy. Let me know if this was helpful for you. Please leave a comment. Please hit like. can find me on TikTok at Self Mastery Tutorials. I suggest that you join my email newsletter, where I'm offering a monthly newsletter as well as different things that I'm up to. And that is all. Thank you. Thank you for watching.